Good afternoon. The new hour is upon us. It's the third Thursday of September, and that can only mean two things. Number one, time for Bites and Bits of History, sponsored in part by the John and Loretta Hines Foundation. I welcome all of you, many familiar faces, for today's program. My name is Bill Lawson. I'm Executive Director of Mahoning Valley Historical Society, and on behalf of everybody, we're very happy to see you for this program today. Before we get into the program, I have a few announcements to make. It's a very busy time of year. I want to keep you up to date, but back in August, we opened an exhibit at Armstown Museum called Welcome to Isley, a Youngstown Story. And that's open right now for our regular hours, which are Tuesday through Sunday from noon to 4. The second floor of the Armstown Museum will be open until, I think, we'll be closing the whole museum down on Monday, October 27th, I believe is a great date. But you can go see the exhibit then. During this transitional period, as we get ready for Memories of Christmas Past at our Armstown Museum, our exhibits are half price, but the number of you are members, doesn't matter, because you get it free anytime you want. So, anyway, so come and see that. Coming soon to the Community History Gallery, the Youngstown Foundation Community History Gallery here at Tyler History Center, is a new photo exhibit called This is Youngstown, the Hispanic People of the City. And this exhibit was put together and curated by local photographic artist Tony Nicholas. It's going to be really interesting, and it will be open to the public here at Tyler on Saturday, October 4th. So hopefully you'll have a chance to see that as well. Coming up the first Monday of October is the Mahoning Valley Cultural Alliance continuing series of stories of immigrants. And this time we'll be dealing with Czechoslovakia. It should be a very interesting program, and it will start at 5 p.m. at St. Mary's Assumption Social Center, which is on South Bella Vista Avenue on the west side. If you want more information about reservations, please see Linda over the table, and she can handle that for you. The next day, Tuesday, October 6th, we have the Simeon Booker Awards for Courage, which will happen in this room, and that starts at 7 p.m. And if you're interested in attending that, can we have you check in with Tracy, and she can give you more information about that awards program here at Tyler History Center. Coming up also in October, on Saturday, October 18th, our History to Go annual popular program, Oak Hill Cemetery Tours, will be taking place roughly between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. Now, we do registration entirely online. You need to register in advance because it's very, very popular. It will sell out. For members of the Historical Society, you have first crack at reservations, and that will start September, I think Sunday, September 28th.
That's right.
Right. So if you go to our website, you'll probably get, if you're a member, the weekly newsletter on that day, Sunday the 28th, and it'll have a link that will take you right there so you can make a reservation for this tour. It's very popular. Again, we'll have a theme going this year as far as our military veterans and how they are represented in Oak Hill Cemetery, and hope you can attend that as well on Saturday, October 18th. We'll talk more about Memories of Christmas Past when we do our October program, which is coming up on Thursday, October 16th at noon here at Tyler History Center. And it will be Magic in the Mahoning Valley and a Century of Mysteries. Our presenter will be Fritz Coombs and Guy Morton. from the Youngstown Magic Club, and Fritz is a regular attender of these events. He's also on our board now, and a retired local attorney, and a full-time professional magician at this point. So, should be very interesting, and hope you can attend that on Thursday, October 16th. But now for today, and our program is called Preserving Your Heirlooms with Jessica Trickett, who is the MVHS Collections Manager. A Youngstown native, Jessica has been with the Historical Society since 1998. As Collections Manager, she curates the Historical Society's collection, develops museum exhibits, and works with other staff, interns, and volunteers to make the collection accessible in as many ways as possible to the public. She presents lectures on professional, educational, and civic organizations, exploring themes in local history, including ethnic traditions, social roles, and local material culture. Jessica holds a Master of Arts degree in history and a certificate of historic preservation from Youngstown State University, and she's very excited to be here today to talk about preserving your heirlooms. Jessica.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate you coming out and doing some of the fun nitty-gritty things that we like to do here every day. Maybe it's not the mob, but it's still important. So I'm gonna, just give you some of my tips and tricks from my years of experience here, and some things that you can do at home, that might help you to preserve your items, so that eventually, maybe they come to us and we can preserve them into perpetuity for the rest of our community. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So today I'm going to focus on preservation techniques for three-dimensional items, such as furniture or decorative objects or textiles, things like that. So Pam Space and Chelsea Hess, who are our archive staff, they can give you some more general ideas of how to care for your photographs and paper-based items. If you have questions, I can answer those, but they're the experts on those types of things. So when it comes to preserving your heirlooms, whether they're furniture, textiles, or household items, less is usually more. Methods for creating the best environment for your collection will usually prevent damage before it happens. So preventative is the best way to go for preservation. So there are many environmental factors that can affect the preservation of your items, and they can cause damage if they're not quite right. The enemies of your heirlooms are temperature and humidity extremes, ultraviolet light, pests and pollutants, water, chemicals, and improper handling and storage. So a lot of times things are damaged because of these situations. You can prevent that by knowing the proper techniques to use. So I'm going to take a few moments to talk about what to do and what not to do in order to ensure that your family treasures last for generations. Regarding temperature and humidity levels, it's best that they could stay as constant as possible. Now I know, here in Northeast Ohio, our fluctuations can be wild in the period of 24 hours. But if you've got, your HVAC at home, and you can set it to a relatively stable temperature, that is of course best. If you can keep them if it's at all possible, you can keep them out of your attics and basements, that's also best. Because, temperature and humidity fluctuations in those spaces can sometimes be extreme, especially attics. In the summer months, especially if you don't have insulation, you can have really high temperature spikes that can do damage. And then there, of course, is more opportunity for moisture infiltration, like in your basements where you have the pipes overhead and things like that, or flooding that can cause damage as well. So the ideal ranges for temperature is about 65 to 75 degrees. You can keep that kind of constant, that's good. And even if you're going to be on the low side or the high side, the constancy is really what is most important. If you have fluctuations, whether they're super high or super low, that's what's usually going to cause damage. And your ideal relative humidity is going to be about 35 to 55%. And again, that's going to be hard to maintain, here. Of course, your humidity in the wintertime is going to go very, very low, and in the summertime, it's usually higher. So if you have a humidifier or a dehumidifier to kind of keep those steady, that really does help for preservation purposes. Here's what happens when you have the humidity too low. You can have cracking in objects that maintain moisture content, like your wood, because if the moisture is sucked out too much, then the wood is going to crack where your moisture is not present. So along with wood, other organic materials are going to experience that kind of cracking. But unfortunately, when your humidity is too high, you're also going to experience other problems like mold. And of course, that's not healthy for either objects or humans. So avoiding that is really important. Light levels are another thing that affect the health of your objects. It can accelerate the deterioration of many different types of objects. So limiting exposure to UV rays with window films or blinds is a good option. Also covering heirloom furniture with tablecloths or runners if you're using it, but it's by a window. You can cover it with some kind of a textile or something that will keep it from fading. That's a great option. If it's in storage, you can cover it with a dust cloth that'll keep it safe from pests and pollutants and light exposure as well. I'll show you at the end of our presentation some of the materials that we use for these types of coverage. This is a window seat that's at the Arms Family Museum. And this is especially vulnerable to fading because it's, and it has direct sunlight for part of the day. So to prevent the damage, we have installed low-E glass storm windows that prevent some of the UV light from coming in and damaging that wood in the interior of the museum. Pests and pollutants, dust, gases in the air around us, all those things can cause damage over time and degrade objects. So really, some of the things you can do are very simple. Limiting the chance of pest damage and things like that. You can dust regularly. What we use as a museum would be just any kind of a soft, dry, lamb's-wool duster or microfiber cloth, that kind of thing. And also dust can really cause scratching to objects. It can cause breakage in textile fibers, and it can transport other airborne pollutants and pests as well. Keeping food and drink away from objects is also important because they, of course, can damage items and attract pests as well. Keeping your HVAC filters clean to limit the airborne pollutants, that's another tip to remember. Inspecting for pests regularly. If you're, in your closet and you notice moth holes or things like that, it's time to address the situation. And also weatherizing the exterior of your house that limits the options for pests to be able to come in. Mice can do lots and lots of damage to collections as well. If you can use traps and not chemicals, That's best, especially right near your objects, because chemicals can also be damaging to your heirloom collections as well. Here are some examples of moth and mice damage on textiles that have been stored away. So again, just be aware, if they're stored away, even if they're in the attic or the basement, make sure you check on them occasionally and just, inspect for mold damage, pest damage, and that type of thing. This is an example of corrosion caused by airborne pollutants. So, and rust forms, when metals are exposed to air, and unfortunately there's not a whole lot we can do about that, but again, if you keep the kind of optimal environmental conditions, you can limit the danger of that. One of the most serious enemies of collections is water, and it can really cause lots of extensive damage to your heirlooms. Might be caused by a beverage set on a table, or might be caused by an overhead leak of one of your plumbing pipes. So keeping liquids away is really crucial, as much as possible. If they're stored near pipes, it's a great idea to cover your items with, like, say, an unbleached muslin dust cover, and then a plastic sheeting over top of that. Still allowing for ventilation, because you don't want to create a microclimate where you're going to get mold or things like that underneath. But if you've got a leak, that plastic will hopefully prevent some damage from happening. Again, I'll mention, if you can possibly not store your items in basements, it's a great idea, because you have the predisposition to dampness because, of course, of being underground. And then if there is a leak or flood, the basement is going to be the first place that is damaged. Again, water with textiles can be beneficial, but it can also be harmful. If you have a textile that's fragile, if you think it's not necessarily stable, it's a good idea to err on the side of caution and not wash something. Like old lace can literally disintegrate if you try to wash it even delicately, hand washing, that type of thing. So less is more again. Here are some examples of water damage that we have at the museum. You can see somebody probably left their cup on our library table at some point and leaving a ring. Some water damage on the top of one of our model ships in the solarium that could be, from an exterior leak or something that happened at some point. I mentioned chemicals, less is more. Cleaning chemicals can really leave some harmful residues, especially on wood, if you're talking like, your pledge or your other types of polishing. Those things can build up over time, and then, depending on the finish of your wood, it can get sticky or things like that. So that's why we generally, stay away from chemicals and just dust with, more often than not, these days I use microfiber cloth because it's, there's no chemicals on it. It's got kind of like an electrostatic where it's going to pick up the dust, but it usually won't harm anything. And the exceptions to that are if, you have any kind of unstable cracks or anything on your woodwork, then the microfiber might catch, and then, you've got a splinter coming off or something. So you just have to be careful and be aware of the condition of your items. Also, you can vacuum items through a mesh screen. That helps if you've got, like, especially on furniture or something, an area of maybe rib air or something, you don't want to lift off any more of the fabric, and the mesh will keep anything from coming up into the vacuum cleaner. Okay, so here's just another example of wear and tear that we have, you know, from everyday use of furnishings. And that's not going to necessarily be mitigated because, you know, you don't want to, there's kind of a fine line, there's a balance of use and preservation. And we have that same issue here at the museum, access versus preservation. So, you know, you want to use and enjoy your objects, of course. There are just, you know, some things you can do to kind of prevent things from excessive damage. So for handling and storage of like your smaller items that you're not necessarily using on a regular basis, what we do and what you can do to prevent items from, you know, everyday damage, we use cotton gloves, just plain white cotton gloves. And again, I'll show you all these items at the end of the presentation and do some little demonstrations. But everybody has oils and acids in their hands that can cause corrosion on woods and metals and textiles. So being able to put on just a pair of gloves as a barrier is a great idea. So cotton gloves are reusable, washable. You can use disposable nitrile gloves as well. I wouldn't use vinyl gloves because vinyl in all its forms is really not a good option for preservation. And but nitrile is an inert kind of plastic rubber that's a great alternative. Using barriers between furniture and objects that you set them on also helps to prevent rings being left on furniture. Things that can help with these situations are doilies, or decorative, you know, that you can use just as decorative objects. Or you can use polyester is a good kind of plastic. It's inert. Polyester, polyethylene, polypropylene. Those are all good types of plastic that can be used safely for historic items. So polyester film, the trade name for that is Mylar, and we buy it through collection supplies companies. You may be able to find it, you know, on Amazon or something like that. You can find everything on Amazon these days, honestly. But we use that for barriers when we're exhibiting things, especially between objects and like painted surfaces, so you don't have any transfer of paint. Or, you know, if you have a rough surface on the bottom of a vase, you don't want to scratch your wooden table. It's good to have a little barrier in between those things. So for holding and carrying, it's always good to support objects from below. Don't use handles if you have a pitcher or if you have like a little, you know, terrain with handles on either side. Those are where the weak points are, because those are where the handles are joined to the object. You don't want to risk breaking those. So carrying from underneath is always a good tip. If you have a larger object, always make sure you have some help. I'm guilty of not having help when I move large objects sometimes. But yeah, just be patient, you know, because you'd rather have something, you don't want to, you'd rather be safe than sorry, basically. I'm going to give you a demonstration of proper storage materials at the end as well. But our basics for everyday storage are acid-free tissue paper. We use unbleached muslin, again, as dust covers, acid-free boxes, padded hangers for hanging garments, and those types of things. So just a little bit of information about what does this all mean, the materials that you want to buy or use for storing your objects. So again, I mentioned acid-free. Acid-free has a pH of 7.0, which is basically considered neutral between acidic and alkaline. But acid-free things that you buy can become acidic over time as they are exposed to the elements. So changing them periodically is recommended so that you don't have something that's creating an acidic environment. There's also two different kinds of acid-free. One has an alkaline buffer, which neutralizes acids that may be produced over time, and it's usually good for most paper-based collections. Unbuffered tissue doesn't have that alkaline buffer. It should be used for materials that are sensitive to the alkaline buffer. So that includes things like blueprints, organic materials like silk, wool, leather, any kind of animal-based product. So we tend to use unbuffered tissue paper on all of our textiles, just because you don't always know the composition of the fabrics and things that you have. Lignin-free, that's another term you might have heard. Lignin is a component of plant and tree cell walls, but it can produce acid that makes things darken over time. So lignin-free is the best way to preserve your paper-based items. Also, if you have things stored in boxes, it's great to label them on the outside. That way you don't have to handle them, overly much in order to know where something is, and create a possibility of damaging something. And we always label with pencil rather than ink, because ink can bleed over time as well. We just talked about that. And now it's demonstration time. So, I didn't think about doing this with the microphone. Sorry, I'm still over here.
You're good.
Alright, so we're going to demonstrate. First, I'm just going to kind of run through all the different materials that we have over here on the table. Here are my white cotton gloves. And again, we have suppliers that we buy a lot of our acid-free boxes and tissues and things from. But nowadays, a lot of things are available on Amazon. And you just have to be careful that you can trust the source. So, for things like cotton gloves, so you can tell they're cotton gloves. But for things like acid-free boxes and materials like that, I would be a little more careful, because, any company can say that a box is acid-free. But is it, and is it of the quality that you want for your material? So at the end, on the next slide over, I'm actually going to give you some resources for storage materials or conservation questions you might have. And I have a great little handout that everybody's welcome to take at the end as well. This is from Gaylord Archival, which is a supply company, but they give a pamphlet that really gives you some great information on how to store your objects, what can negatively impact them, what kinds of materials are best, and all of that. So anybody who's interested, all these are going to be available to you. So I've got my gloves. Here are microfiber cloths that I bought from Walmart in the automotive section, because they're cheaper than in the other departments. But it has no kind of chemicals or anything with it, and it's a very kind of inert way to clean objects. And, when I'm cleaning something, I just simply, rather than picking it up and cleaning it, I just simply kind of run the microfiber cloth over it as it's sitting. That way you're not risking further damage or anything by picking it up or, rolling it around as you're cleaning it. So that's, a simple way to clean your materials. Thanks, that's a good idea. All right, everybody still here? simple way to kind of clean your objects is use a microfiber and just leave it sitting in place and kind of dust around. I'm going to show you, okay, we mentioned another object that you can use for cleaning is mesh. And this is simply like screen window mesh.
Oh no.
Hello? Okay, sorry. So window screen mesh that you use for, a screen window screen. And you can buy it on a roll like this, at the hardware store. And this is just the plastic kind, not the metal kind, because you don't want it to be super scratchy or anything. But if you are wanting to clean a delicate textile, I'm going to use this fiber batting as an example. Just lay your mesh screen over it, and then you can run your handheld vacuum attachment over it, so none of the fibers or anything are going to lift off and be sucked away by the vacuum. Because this vacuums can have a lot of suction, you've got to be careful with that. So, other materials you can use just for basic storage or protection at your home. This is polyester batting that you can buy at any craft store, and this is great to use as like an interleaving material if you are wanting to fold away and store maybe a quilt or a coverlet or some type of larger textile. You can spread it out maybe just on your bed or some large table if you have that. The key things to remember are if you have to fold an object, you always want to reinforce that fold with some type of stabilizer material so that the fold doesn't get a crease. And then your creases are always that's going to be where you get any kind of degradation in the fabric over time if that fold is, if it's going to be stored away for any period of time. So if you can use something like this to create a little roll in between among your folds, and once you fold something over that, it will help preserve that fold so that the material is not in danger of losing any fibers. You can use regular, yes?
Is it better to fold with the good side in or up?
I don't think it matters. I think it's a matter of changing it regularly. So if you decide to fold your quilt with the top, the top decorative side going in, say in 6 months, switch that out and then fold it the other way. Because the other thing you want to do is you want to kind of rotate where you're folding things so that the stresses are not happening on the same folds over and over again. So that keeps, again, things from becoming damaged over time. Another good way to store your larger textiles is to create a tube. Now this is just a regular cardboard mailing tube, but we have it covered with an acid-free cardstock here. So that prevents cardboard regularly is acidic. So you don't want the cardboard coming into contact with your textile. So if you cover that with an acid-free, again, this is just kind of like a thin cardstock, then that creates a barrier between the cardboard and your textile, so you don't have to worry about the acid leaching through. And then, I don't really have a lot of room here to do you know, a proper demo with a coverlet or something like that. But if you lay your coverlet out with your roll on one side on your acid-free tissue paper, then as you roll your tube, each layer has its own interleaving of tissue paper. So you don't want your fibers, your textile fibers, rubbing together, because again, that could be a catalyst for damage. So interleaving with tissue paper is always a good idea when you're going to be folding something to store away. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment here. Another way to store textiles, especially costumes, is you can take your regular store-bought hanger, add your polyester batting or fiberfill to cover the arms of the hanger, and then just cover that with a little muslin protective sleeve here. And then this is ready to hold, you know, a formal gown or something like that that you can then just hang in your closet. And then if you want to do the extra mile, you can take some more muslin and create a dust cover for the top of the garment. So then, you know, a lot of people use dry cleaner bags for this type of application, but because of the mystery of what that bag might be made of, as well as, you know, preventing airflow. You know, you don't want to create an environment where something's going to baby growth start growing mold or something like that. Breathable fabrics are a better alternative for that.
I have some hangers that are crochet covered with that yarn.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah, acrylic, polyester, those types of things are fine. The reason we don't sometimes, it depends. Sometimes your organic fibers, of course, can attract pests. So the polyesters and acrylics, even though that might be counterintuitive, that can be, those can be a better choice sometimes for storage, just because they're not, nobody's going to want to nibble on that. So, but muslin, of course, is a natural fiber, and a good tip also is to wash before you use it, because they usually have like a sizing in muslin that you buy at the fabric store. That again has a chemical component that you don't want to be rubbing against your stored items. So, another really cheap way to create a dust cover, especially for furniture, is just like a plain white sheet, you know. If you've got like a trunk in the attic or a, you know, secretary desk or something like that you want to just, believe me, half the battle is just keeping it clean, and because that can do a ton of damage over time. So if you can cover things while they're in storage, it's a great idea. This one is cotton. Again, polyester is fine. Cotton is fine, again, but you just have to kind of monitor, you know, in storage if there's anything getting into it. Yes?
I take it you wouldn't recommend a vacuum sealed container for any of the linens or anything like that?
I don't know personally. My hesitance would be, is it really vacuum sealed? Like or if it's vacuum sealed, what kind of plastic is you know, what kind of plastic container are you using? It could be, yeah, it could be reinforcing wrinkles, it could be creating kind of a microclimate for the whatever your plastic container is made of to kind of infiltrate whatever's stored inside of it. Plastics are tricky. I mentioned there are some safe plastics. A lot of your commercial cups and things like that you buy are not going to be safe plastics.
I asked that question because I have a couple containers at home.
Yeah.
That have like old blankets and old baskets on in, and when you suck the air out of them, it compresses them, and they fit up into the cupboard easier, and
Sure.
until you can get the 2 or 3 in the space where you can only get one.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I would say probably not a good idea,
Okay.
because again, when you fold these things properly with lots of tissue and things in between folds, the goal is that you're gonna have less wrinkles. I feel like if you're stuffing more into a box in order to fit it, that's gonna create more of a wrinkle type situation, unfortunately. I mentioned Mylar polyester film as a barrier for objects that you want to place, even if they're out on display. Obviously, this is clear, so it's not going to be too noticeable. You can cut the size of whatever, or shape of whatever object you're setting, on your table or whatever. I would cut this piece smaller, because all you need to do is fit it around, the perimeter of the bottom of the object, but, then you place that, and it creates a barrier between your object and whatever's below it. Say you want to place this on a silver tray or something like that, when you have different types of materials, you can create different reactions between objects. So it's always good to have a little barrier between them. And I mentioned, just storage of textiles. I'm going to show you a little box here with some clothing items. This is our acid-free tissue paper here. This is, again, unbuffered, because unless you know what your, or 100% sure what your textile is made of, the unbuffered will not cause any damage to any type of fabric that you're going to be dealing with. This box here contains 2 textile costume pieces. And one of them is a 19th century wedding coat. The other is a 1956 prom dress from Cheney High School. So, again, this is worn by a local lady to her prom at Cheney. Material is I think all synthetic, but it's a beautiful kind of mid-century print here, a chiffon scarf patch. Now the goals are always as few folds as possible. So if you can get a box big enough to fit your item without folding it at all, that's fantastic. If you wanted to hang this on a padded hanger, you could do that. You just have to keep in mind that there are stress points even when you're using a padded hanger. That's the whole reason for adding the padding, so that you're going to create as little stress as possible. But you still, because the weight of the garment is pulling down from the hanger, you're going to have some stress no matter what. So boxing is usually the best option if you can. But again, who has space to box everything? That's always one of our challenges as well, space. But, you do the best you can, and that's really the only thing you can do. So, I like to spread things out as much as possible. I'm going to take off my gloves so I can handle the tissue. And I just spread a layer of tissue over this gown. In case, now on this, I wouldn't put another garment in here, because this is already moving out, it's got like a little underskirt kind of starch tool, so you don't really want to smash that by putting anything on top of it. So I create my layer, and then I determine whether or not I need to do any additional folding. Now the dress itself actually fits in here pretty well, but the scarf I'm going to fold over so that it doesn't get trapped below and start to get hard wrinkles. And then I'll need to do an additional fold on the scarf as well. So what I'll do is add another piece of tissue paper. And then that creates a little bit of a cushion for that fold. So I'll put one more little layer of tissue here, and then we're done, and we're ready to put the layer, or the little, yes.
Is that tissue paper something you can get at a regular store or at a specialty?
This is, again, this is one of the things I would probably go to a well-recognized archival supply store for. Because again, you can go to Amazon and find acid-free paper, but, you know, these, the companies that sell these, you know, on a professional level, usually have testing that they have to go through. They publish, you know, the acid contents and things like that to their materials. With Amazon, you can buy something that says it's acid-free, and it might be, who knows how much, you know, you're actually, what you're actually getting, basically. So I'll give you some resources for the reputable companies that you can find these things. But the names of some of the companies are Gaylord, Archival, which I mentioned. There's Holland or Metal Edge, Light Impressions, Clearview, some others that I'm forgetting, but those are the ones we regularly buy from. And I will say they are expensive because, again, they are held to kind of a high standard. They're professional companies that sell to museums, you know, all over, and their items are tested and held to, you know, certain standards. So now, for smaller objects, here's another type of acid-free box here. Inside, I have a little collection of metals that, this is actually a real-life example here. We have a lady who came to us here at the museum and asked us to help her preserve this collection of materials from her family member. She's a World War II veteran and has several medals that she wanted to have us store away for her for preservation purposes. So here's a little couple pieces of acid-free tissue that I put here in the box. And when it comes to small objects like these, what I like to do is create sort of a packet in the tissue. Rather than, you know, when you wrap up your Christmas ornaments, maybe you just crunch a little ball with a paper towel or newspaper or something like that, and, you know, put it into the box. I'm going to be a little more precise with my packaging. And the goal is to handle the object as little as possible. Like when you're going to reopen it, rather than having to unfold it 100 times, you want to be able to just have a couple flaps that you open and there it is. Because that's less opportunity for damage. So, kind of start creating your packet based on the size of your object. So, I'm going to take one of these metals here. Wow. This is a military merit medal. part that is dangling from a rotating ribbon, and then it has a pin at the top for fastening. So, I'm going to create my packet to kind of, mirror the size of the object. So what I'm doing then, I normally would have this now. Should I go out again?
Gotcha.
I have some kind of energy that this thing doesn't like.
Is the light red or green?
It's red.
Okay,
Is it battery?
yeah.
I'm sorry. Somebody doesn't want you guys to know this. Okay, so that's for metal in our packet. I'm going to hold it up so hopefully you can see it a little bit better. So what I'll do though is I will kind of just fold the ends up. I'm not going to fold it up. Fold the top end and the bottom end over top of the metal. And then I'm going to fold the right and the left side to kind of create a little grill packet for vegetables on your grill. And then I'm going to fold that part just over and over again until it lies flat to create your packet. So then, again, when you go to reopen it, you don't have to unfold a bunch of tissue paper, you're just unfolding those flaps that you made. And then this just gets tucked inside the box. Now, if you have a small collection of things going in the box that are going to rattle around in there, just create a little nest of tissue paper underneath, and then you lay your folded objects on top of that so that they're not going to rattle around when you're moving them from place to place. So, see if there's anything else in this here. Yeah, I think that's about it. At my next slide, it shows you some of the resources. So we have intermediate conservation. They're up in Cleveland, Ohio, and we use them here at the museum. Museums around the country use them. Now they're conservators, which means if you have an object that's been damaged, say you're moving it and it broke, or it's just a matter of maybe a painting that has got darker and darker and darker over time. They can take those objects, clean them, repair them, and return them looking not necessarily like brand new, but looking the way that they're supposed to. And again, they're wonderful, and they will help you to decide what kind of treatment you want, what kind of cost is associated with that, etc. I mentioned Gaylord Archival, which is the company that publishes this book that I'm making available to you. It's called A Guide to Collections Care. In here, they talk about paper, photographs, textiles, and books. So, I didn't necessarily touch on the paper stuff today, but you'll be able to get some great information through here. There's Light Impressions, another archival supplier. Hollinger Metal Edge, we get a lot of our supplies from there. They tend to be one of the better priced companies out there. My little box over here has a nice little advertisement on the side. And I know we get a lot of our photograph enclosures and things like that from a company called Clearfile. And then University Products is another one of them that has materials. I have a short list here if anybody's interested in that as well. But does anybody have any questions? No. Well, she was first.
I wrapped some jewelry in old cotton paintings, is that okay?
It should be okay. You know, silver cloth is fine, like if you have silver items, it does tend to prevent corrosion and things like that. Cotton, like it kind of depends on what your jewelry material is made out of. But it, you know, in general, yeah, that should be fine.
Looks like the dyes and.
Oh, if you're, yeah, I would say definitely just use plain white, yeah. You have one?
Yeah, on your early slide, you said the ideal temperature is 75 to 80, I'm sorry, 65 to 75.
Right.
Again, like you mentioned, we have these really hot, humid summers here,
Sure.
fairly cold winters. So 65 to 75 is the ideal range. Is there an acceptable range?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, if you want, you know, what's most important is that you're going to stay relatively constant. And really what's more important than your temperature is going to be your humidity. Because if you get a temperature, even if you're maintaining, say, a constant temperature of 80, 83, if your humidity then spikes, you're looking at mold. So if you can keep your humidity low, even on those high temperature days, so a dehumidifier will really help in that situation. Yeah, that's kind of the short answer.
Oh, yes, so no real.
There's not really like an okay version. There's just do the best that you
It's
can.
not so much the 65 as the
uppers.
The upper.
Yeah.
And if I try to, those days when it's hot,
Yeah.
here 90, I try to keep it below 75, there, and should never stop running.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I got a dehumidifier in my basement that runs constantly, and it really makes a difference. If you can just keep that humidity lower, even in the high temp days. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. Mhm. Right, right. Yeah, these are the ones that, like I said, are the professional companies that supply these things. They'll be byproducts. Yeah. Again, I know you can go to some of the craft stores and that they have materials that say they're acid-free. I would just do a little bit more research, you know, find out if they get if they're tested for their pH levels and things like that. If you know, they have like something on their packaging that says that they are held to some certain standard or something like that. Yeah.
How do you wash like oil or something, textile, but you put it there and you want to keep it quickly?
First, again, I would test for the strength of the fibers. I'm hesitant to do any kind of washing when it comes to textiles. Of course, if you do choose to wash something like that, you're going to wash it by hand. Never ever put it in any kind of washing machine or dryer. Do it, you know, maybe in the dish sink where you can have like a little dish tub that your item is not in danger of going down the drain or getting caught in any kind of, you know, drainage or anything like that. There's a soap called Orbis, O-R-B-U-S. It's actually it's made for horses, but it's very gentle, and conservators and museum people use it to wash fragile things. And yeah, I wouldn't use any kind of commercial detergent or anything like that on it even. And even start with water, just plain water to begin with. You can, you know, But, you know, it's a little simple, form, it's like a paste type of a thing. And just gently with your fingers, you know, I wouldn't use any kind of brush or anything like that, even just as gentle as you possibly can.
Now what it goes through is that when it's like putting silicone or set and you just throw it in the wash machine or would you?
I wouldn't use any kind of machine, I really wouldn't. If you're, you know, if it's something that's really precious to you, yeah, I would do it by hand where you can see every step of what's happening, you know? Because you never know what's going to happen in that washing machine. Yeah. Usually those are like flies dropping or evidence of pest activity, and that's why keeping them clean, dust-free, covered, or, you know, put away in a drawer or something. Now, if you have a textile out, you know, and you want to use it, of course, you know, you should. You just have to be careful with it and mindful of how long it's out. I would change things periodically so it's not just out for years on end or something like that, yeah. Yeah. Is there a way to fix it? Yeah. That's where I would refer to a conservator, because we did actually have somebody on one of our window seats that came and they were able to match the like the original staining and fix some watermarking for us. But that's not something I would undertake, you know, myself. If you contact ICA, they might have advice for you on that as well.
A more general question in regards to maintaining an archive collection. Given the limits of your ability to physically store and maintain archive objects, how do you decide when somebody, I assume locals are presenting to you objects that there's a saying, one man's trash is another's treasure, and vice versa? Who decides that an object may have merit or not?
That's a good question. Obviously, the staff we're judicious in what we take. You know, we have a collections policy that dictates what we will and won't take. So we follow that. We follow those procedures as far as like if it's something we already have, if it's something we have many examples of, if it's something that's damaged, you know, we're going to turn it down. If it's something that we think we have a good case for taking, we have a policy where we take to our committee anything that's over 15 cubic feet, you know, in size to get approval. So it's not just, you know, we're not just making decisions in a vacuum. But yeah, we have policies and things that help us to determine what we will and won't do. But I think we are over our time, so we'll wrap it up. And if anybody has a question, you can come on up and talk to me afterwards.
Thank you so much, Jess. Great presentation. One of the things we enjoy with the Bites and Bits series, we have a lot of experienced staff and knowledge about things that we do, and we love the opportunity to share it with our members, with our audiences, as we did today. So thank you all for being here for that. That does it. See you again on Thursday, October 16th at noon, and we'll talk about some magic. Good day.